I wanted to take the opportunity to do a short presentation to help dispel what I believe are some misconceptions about who I am and about the project that I'm involved with. And in advance, I want to say that when I speak about me, I'm actually speaking about this collaborative teamwork that I'm involved with. I've always had an interest in projects that consist of structures, the process, which is what the key ingredients is that artists track during the course of their works. And I do like difficult projects where there's the opportunity of reinventing the wheel. As far as my background, I've always had an interest in art. When I was in high school, I was awarded a 4-year scholarship to Northwestern. I declined on that and went to Illinois Wesleyan University, where I studied primarily painting and printmaking. I also have overseas studies in Rome, where I studied art and architecture. I'm 4th generation carpenter. I have a very strong blue-collar work ethic, as does everybody else on my team, which I think is a very much Chicago-based sensibility. I've been self-employed for 35 years. I was also a crane operator at one point and worked in a steel yard. So I have a fairly extensive knowledge on building materials, structures, process, building codes, commercial and residential. I'm also a cabinet maker, which is much different from being a carpenter. It's a different set of tools, a different set of skills. I have to be familiar with woodworking machinery, different species of woods, fabrication, joinery, shapers. This was actually fabricated for a federal judge. Biedermeier influenced piece. I did a lot of custom stairways, which is a complete separate art form of woodworking. I was working with a scientist up at Marquee University in their biorobotic division. And so these become very sophisticated and elaborate projects unto themselves. I still was involved with various art projects, and I do want to mention in the course of all these projects, whether I'm doing building trade work or cabinetry work, I was constantly producing artwork out of a studio. The next picture you see is of some houses, which was a Don Baum-related event for Art Encounter that was held at the Union League last year, one of the most successful events ever, and I fabricated 40 houses for them for that event. And this is actually a major glue-up of a boat, which was one of the more sophisticated projects that I've worked on some years back. The interior of the boat, which gets built first before the exterior, and this is what the outside of the boat looks like. It's a 1950s Chris Craft design. It sleeps 3. There's a head in there and a small kitchenette. I'm also a rabid collector. These are some images of my house, and it goes to show you the daily experience that I have with art, which I enjoy having it around me. There's a picture of my bedroom, and you can see on the wall is a series of Ivan Albright lithographs. So if you're familiar with them, you'll realize what an interesting thing that is to wake up to. I also have 2 or 3 other major photo archives. So one is the press release photos from the Tribune, Sun-Times, and Daily News from the 60s and 70s of the Chicago art scene. It is the finest collection in the world of Chicago's art, including public artworks installations, and the whole dynamics of the art scene, 60s and 70s. I also have a collection that reflects back on the 20th century American work experience. And another collection I have is from Richard Rush Studios, who was the premier exhibition designer in the world. He worked on the famous Heart down at the Science and Industry Museum. So I went to school at Illinois Wesleyan, and one of the campus jobs that I had was working at the gallery. And in 1976, a show came in from the Koffler Foundation, which consisted of the Chicago Imagist work. And that was the first time I'd ever seen that kind of work. And so as I hung the show, I realized, for me, this is art. This is what art is all about. And that's why I ended up here in Chicago. So those people whose work I hung were my heroes in college. And over the years of being in Chicago, I've got to know and meet them. In some cases, I work with them besides being friends. So my heroes became my friends over the years. So these are pictures of Carl Worsam, Jim Nutt, Gladys Nielsen, Richard Hunt, and then I was very close friends with Ed Paschke. So I had a studio down the hall from Ed for 8 years on Howard Street. And if I hadn't known Ed, there's no way I could have done this Vivian Maier project. From the work that I did and from knowing Ed, I learned about the ins and outs of galleries, collectors, museums, and artists, and it's in auction houses. So there's an entire triad that has to be navigated in bridge building in order to do the kind of project like Vivian Maier. Throughout the course, again, of working, I've always created artwork and participated in various shows. I did a project I was awarded in 2002, a public artworks project from the city of Chicago. It's located at Gallery 37. So it's a working marquee. It consists of 4,500 pieces of hand-cut wood to create the marquetry entrance, and includes one of my paintings and a collaborative piece, because again, I always enjoy collaboration, that includes design work by Jim Nutt, Gladys Nilsson, Ed Paschke, Carl Ursum, and the Roger Brown Study Center. Unfortunately, Ed Paschke died in 2004. I put together a memorial show for him in 2005. So again, there's the experience of putting together show catalogs, exhibition catalogs, advertisement. So I'm just going to talk briefly about the misconception about how easy this project is. If you remember pictures of the boat, that I built, that boat, in comparison to the Vivian Maier project, is like building bookends. This is the most complex thing I've ever tackled, and it's complex on multiple levels. One of the levels that we deal with is what is our lineage to this project? What do we validate? What do we bring to the table here? So our story, because it starts with the unfolding of Vivian Maier, we're as close to the lineage of Vivian Maier as can be. The prints that we make, unfortunately, we don't have directions from her or from a body of work to follow. So we've had to come up with a philosophical stance of how we're going to do, how are we going to showcase in an honorable way and present her work. One of the key ingredients for me is everyone on the project is Chicago-based, with Chicago-based sensibilities. We fell back onto the auspices that the works would only include the technology of the time. So we don't do any digital formatting, we don't do any digital corrections. We always stay first generation negative. If there's any sort of issues on the negatives, because we don't even wash them for fear of irreparable damage, we hand correct that. Sandy Steinbrecher hand corrects that on each and every print, so that these are all labor intensive, old fashioned, expensive, traditional approaches. When you go to see a print or purchase a print, you're buying a slice, just as when you buy any sort of piece of artwork, of almost like a performance that's taken place. And so it's the performance of the activity, of the discovery, of Vivian Maier's story, of her work, of Ron and Sandy's time involved, of our time involved, and the culmination of the entirety of what it takes place to make a print. So my project is based solely on the prints. We collaborate with other media, book and film, but we don't directly get involved with that. So we're strictly about the prints. That's where all my cares and concerns go into. We don't have the luxury of having Vivian Maier's printer to continue with her work. And again, we don't have the luxury of a body of work that we can reflect upon or try to emulate what her sensibilities were. So we had to create and come out of the box with something that was understandable, acceptable, and respectful towards her and her work. Part of this too, with this philosophy of acceptance, besides just the fact of, who are we, and again, we're a team, we're a collaborative team, to make these decisions, there's also the philosophical hurdle we had to overcome as far as her privacy. Do we have the right? Who has the right to do this? And my stance is, if it makes the world a better place, if it keeps a interest and activity going into the realms of the arts, it's validated. If you think because of the sake of privacy this stuff should not be shown, then you have to start reflecting back: should all home movies be destroyed? Because there's people who collect home movies. Diaries, there would be no Anne Frank if we destroyed other people's material based on that sense of privacy. So is the world a better place because of, say, Anne Frank's diary? And so it's just reinforced over and over to me that it was the right decision to come forth and to produce this work because of basically because of the level of enjoyment that it brings to people. And the word we hear more often than any is inspiration. So it achieves what art is supposed to achieve. It's supposed to inspire. the project grossed $500,000, which sounds like a tremendous amount of money, and it is. But the galleries take half, and we get the other half. So we have a budget of $250,000 to work off of. So out of that $250,000, I have to cover the expense of 3 subcontractors, which includes the 2 master printers and Ann Zakiris, the project coordinator. So we're basically bare bones, because there should be 2 more people, someone to do part of my duties and someone to do part of Ann's duties. We have the expenses of national and international travel, insurance, alarm, the incorporation of a company. Every year I have 1 to 2 attorneys. They range from entertainment attorneys to IP attorneys, and now to probate attorneys. There's a CPA, there's rent, there's storage, there's office supplies, there's fireproof safes, archival storage, there's computers, there's scanners, there's FedEx, there's UPS, there's framing, which is expensive, brochures, catalogs, posters. I have a wood shop, so we save and I fabricate the custom crating that takes place. So anyway, there's a lot of expenses that go out, and it's real easy to burn through $250,000. So that was a break-even year. So the interesting thing about that is it's not the number of prints you produce, but it's the number of prints you sell in a given year. That year we sold 250 prints, which made us our half $250,000, which covered our expenses. So basically we have to sell 1 print a day just to break even, and I'm not salaried. Because of unthought of or unperceived hurdles that I can't or won't overcome, they included the beginning of all this, which was notices being sent out to all of our affiliates, the galleries and the authors, about the potential of upcoming litigation, not to destroy records. And that created an instant chill factor. So at that point, it kicked out the legs of the chair of the entirety of our structure. So we're not a standalone business. We rely on one another as different forms of awareness, either via lectures, the books, the movies. So again, all of these things are assets for one another, and none of them would do well on their own. So once notice was given, I think it basically had the intentions of what it was designed for, which scared the shit out of everybody. And at this point, nobody's willing to do anything because who wants to have liabilities? So unfortunately, it took 4 years for us to build a international structure on 3 continents. We were actually working live time, and I can't go back and rebuild that. It's just impossible at this point. I can't put together another group of people like I had. Between the 4 of us, there's 120 years of art experience. Every one of us has had overseas studies. No one can sit here and wait indefinitely, because we all have to make our livings until this gets resolved. And there's also just the dynamics that can't be replaced as far as the passion of the unfolding of this that's now been diminished. So there's no other group of people that are going to come together, I feel, with our abilities and experience to do things, to handle things as we are. If Cook County wants to continue using the imagery from this part of the collection, it won't be with me. And they're going to have to set up the same structure John Maloof has, which is 1 primary gallery, because they will not be able to find another group of people. They couldn't afford to find another group of people to do what it is that we do. My perceived hurdles for Cook County, to come up with some kind of resolution is nobody ever saw Vivian Maier's body of work, including Vivian Maier. Cook County basically is going to have to rely on John and I as their expert witnesses, which that's not going to work well. The material is privately owned. It was purchased while Vivian Maier was still alive, so that's our private property, which I will not give up, and I have no reason to. Cook County has to rely on us, which they haven't quite figured out yet, for a certain level of expertise, from the very basics of handling the material to what the material consists of to what we do with it. So the negatives is a raw material. It's not the finished product. This may and should go right to the federal courts. It's a copyright issue. So I'm not interested in spending time and money towards a case that may just end up being bounced out into a different court system. And I'm not infringing, as long as I'm not infringing on copyright, the material that I own is mine, and I'm free to do with as I wish, with the exception of reproduction and selling. I've stamped everything that I own, and the stamp states it is illegal to buy, sell, trade, or exhibit this print without the signature of Jeffrey Goldstein. So unless I sign whatever item you may be looking at, I respectfully ask you do not purchase it. Copyright itself is such a convoluted arena, I don't think anybody really understands it. So my sense is this could potentially go on for years and years. So the collaborative process is key to this project. It's why it's out there. So we work with high schools, and you can see this is the high school marching band of Sioux Falls, one of the last projects we did. We work with colleges, we work for non-for-profits. We do projects that we know will lose money, but it's part of our give back. You'll see Alan Teller, who helped set up the Chicago History Museum show. We had a lecture circuit, and the core people, besides all the work that we did, we also traveled nationally and internationally and gave talks. A lot of times we didn't get paid for that, but that was part of the experience of what we enjoyed doing. This was a New Year's Day breakfast that we had with some of the people who have taken an interest in the project and who I know, including there's Richard Hunt, there's Sarah Paretsky, the author, and Paul Natkin, who we were involved with early on. We have people come in from the film industry, is Rachel Horvitz, who we work with, and Ray Fines. We have a lot of other affiliates throughout the world, and this picture is someone whose name we can't mention, who does special ops mission and was located somewhere in Africa, and took this picture with a Vivian Maier catalog and sent it to us. Here you see Ann and I working on my kitchen table when we started this project 5 years ago. So it gives you an idea of how small it was and we're in our starting point. I have a 1,400 square foot space we work out of, and this space shows kind of filled to the gills as we prepared and got things together for various shows. We actually did 13 shows in 8 months last year before we shut down. This shows a picture of my desk, which is, usually, well, it gives an idea of how busy we were. There you see my desk in the far back corner, and this is as we're dismantling the studio and the office space. And this is a picture of my corner with my computer, and the only thing that saddens me here is it looks like I'm fat. And the last picture is just the studio space cleared out. There's no incentive or impetus for me to start this project back up, and I certainly hope things get worked out for everybody's sake for future Vivian Maier projects.